your chapter 8. That's why I'm asking.
Okay, so yeah, so point is, chapter 8 has had more concepts than we could test in the last exam. So it will. So it's good that you, and I cannot say that it is just the first half or the second half. So it's good that you go over it. Okay, go over it.
Okay.
Yeah. So if wherever you find something overlapping, it's because while preparing the exam for you, maybe could not accommodate everything that we need to test or you should be prepared for before your boards. That's why.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, because you're anyways revising, so I don't think it will be a problem if you revise something twice, right? It's okay. Cool. So anything you want me to go over again? You can go through your NCRT, anything from genetics, anything from reproductive unit, anything from the biotechnology unit, and so on.
Sir, can you explain the menstrual cycle diagram?
Which diagram?
The graph.
Sorry, I could not hear your question completely. Will you repeat?
Diagrammatic representation of various events during a menstrual cycle.
During a menstrual cycle. Okay, so yeah, we can surely do that. I think menstrual cycle was in human reproduction, right?
Yes, sir.
Or it was in reproductive health, in human reproduction only.
No. Yes.
Yeah. So human reproductive system, and let's go to the diagram. Okay. This one?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so good. So we did it. Yes, Donna, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a doubt about the portions for the mock test this week.
Okay, so let's go over this first, and then we'll go to your doubts. How about that?
No, not like that. Like,
yeah.
According to the portions, because in the portions it's written chapter 8, 9, and 10 is there, but the 9 is a deleted chapter, right?
Yes, 9 is deleted chapter, but it's deleted from the boards. But taking into consideration that some students might also be interested in giving other entrances, just including NEET and others. So enhancement of food strategies, I will devote one class to that chapter, just like I will devote today's class to chapter 16. So I was just saying before you joined in that we are aware that certain things have been deleted, and it becomes easier for us also to say that they are deleted and then move on, right? But I think that if I'm teaching you, I should not leave you, because it's deleted from the boards, right? But some of these concepts are important, so we won't be testing too much of theoretical thing from chapter 9. The only thing that will be tested will be building your concepts only, or some important facts that you need to know. Okay, so we are not omitting any chapter, because I think omission has a problem. Someone can just say that, for my exam or for this exam, if someone is interested in doing, let's say, after 12 something in agriculture or something, they would like to give entrances of these agricultural research universities as well. So there are many agricultural research universities in India and abroad. People prepare for that also. Someone who wants to be a veterinary doctor might also be needing certain chapters. So that's why we are not omitting. Okay, that's the general plan.
We just have to like do a small self-study of that chapter.
Yes, just do a small self-study of the chapter, and I'll also for the next, when is your next mock scheduled?
This 30th.
30th, right? So I'll also tell the team to keep this in mind, right? That chapter 9 is omitted. Yeah. Okay. So in general, we are not omitting anything because including will not affect you negatively, but excluding might. So that's the reason, right? Is that okay, Donna?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So so we know that we have studied that in females, in human females, once they reach sexual maturity, after that there is the beginning of menstrual cycle, right? This menstrual cycle is a characteristic feature of primate mammals. Okay. In non-primate mammals, there is another different kind of cycle which is called estrus cycle. So estrus cycle, OESTRUS, that's a neat question. So if anyone wants to just write it down. In primate female mammals, we have menstrual cycle, and it is characterized by menses, which means the blood flows out in that. And the non-primate female mammals, higher mammals, have a estrus cycle because they also undergo ovulation. They have the same physiology, but you will never see non-primates bleeding every month, right? For example, cats, dogs, they don't bleed, they don't undergo this menstrual cycle. Does not mean that they don't have ovaries or they don't have these hormonal regulations, but there it's slightly different, that the blood or the broken down tissue does not flows out of the body. It's slightly different. It's reabsorbed back from the body itself, and the cycle also varies, because they have their breeding seasons and non-breeding seasons. So it varies in breeding season versus non-breeding season. So they don't have a 12 months an year throughout the year a constant menstrual cycle. So that's called estrus cycle, where there's no bleeding. But in human females, there is menstrual cycle. And since I told you there are two organs primarily involved in this, one is the ovary. Ovary is the primary sexual organ of the females, and the other is the uterus. Uterus is the place where after fertilization, the zygote will implant and become an embryo and develop into a fetus. Okay, so there are four major hormones that play a role. Two are FSH and LH, and estrogen and progesterone. FSH and LH are secreted from the anterior pituitary. They are secreted both in males and females. FSH is called follicular stimulating hormone. It is secreted from ovaries, and secreted from pituitary gland, and acts on ovaries and tell the ovaries to start maturing the follicle, the oocyte basically. Okay, it stimulates the maturation of oocyte, primary oocyte to secondary oocyte to when it is released out. Second is LH. LH is luteinizing hormone, and luteinizing hormone acts on the ovary, and through its action, it helps in the secretion of ovarian hormones, which are called estrogen and progesterone. Now, the hormone from where it is released, okay, mostly it does not act there. It acts somewhere else because it's a messenger hormone. Sometimes it also acts within the same organ, but mostly it's different organ. So these hormones which come from brain acts on ovaries, and these hormones which come from ovaries acts on uterus majorly. Is it clear, first of all?
Yes, sir.
Now, the ovarian cycle is regulated by the pituitary hormones, which act on ovary, FSH and LH. And the uterine cycle is regulated by estrogen and progesterone, which are ovarian hormones. So in this combined graph, in one picture, we are trying to analyze what happens to these hormones and what happens to these two organs over time under the regulation of these hormones. So the cycle is of 28 days, as we know, and 14th day is the day of ovulation. So this 14th day is fixed. It's quite deterministically fixed. So in human females, the length of the menstrual flow times, some females have their their bleeding phase, which is 3 days. From 4th day onward, they will not spot the blood. Some females can have bleeding phases till 5 days, and it doesn't, in under normal condition, does not extend more than 7 days. So 3 to 7 days, depending on physiology, that can vary. But in all, in that cycle of 28 days, 14th day is ovulation. Okay, it's very tightly regulated. And why it's tightly regulated? Because it's under the control of FSH and LH, and it has a rhythm from pituitary. So day 1, when there is very low expression of FSH and LH, okay, there is also very low expression of estrogen and progesterone, right? Because LH helps in the secretion of these two. So LH is not there, so these two are also not there. So first about the ovarian cycle. So there are 2 cycles that goes simultaneously during a menstrual cycle. One is called the ovarian cycle, other is called uterine cycle. In ovaries, there is oocyte or follicle developing. So we will be studying stages of oocyte or the follicle. And inside the uterus, we will be talking about the state of endometrium, because that's what changes over time. Okay, so all the bases set. So from day 1, the expression, the secretion of these 2 hormones is very low. From the pituitary, it's very low, and it's not giving signal to the ovarian, to the ovaries. Somewhere around day 12 to 13 here, when you see that estrogen is highest, okay, estrogen by this time is only being secreted by this primary follicle and secondary follicle. Okay, so primary follicle and let me use another marker here. Yeah, right. So this primary follicle is present. It slowly develops into secondary follicle, and this follicle starts secreting estrogen, especially the secondary one. So that's the correlation that you are seeing here, that when the secondary follicle comes up, you see that the level of estrogen also starts going up from this point, right? Can you see that? Because this
Yes.
is secreting estrogen and it's going and acting on the uterus. By the time day 12, 13th comes, before ovulation, just a couple of days before ovulation, estrogen is at its peak. So estrogen is the first hormone that reaches its peak. That's why estrogen is also known as the pre-ovulatory hormone, or the most prominent hormone, which is dominant in the pre-ovulatory phase. So this phase is the whole cycle is divided into 2 phases: pre-ovulatory and post-ovulatory. On 14th day is the ovulation. So in the pre-ovulatory phase, if you see the uterus condition, only estrogen comes up. Okay, and from day 1 to 5 there is bleeding phase, and from 6 to 13 onwards it's called proliferative phase. So this proliferation of the uterus is kicked in, or it started by this high estrogen levels, which are secreted by this follicle. So this is related to this, and this is related to this. Clear? Can you make this correlation?
Can you
Okay.
repeat that part again?
Yes, the proliferative phase of the uterus, where the uterus proliferates. Okay, the thickness of the uterus starts rising, starts increasing. Okay, new layers are forming in the endometrium. Blood vessels have started forming. So in that proliferative phase, estrogen plays the most important role. That is the pre-ovulatory hormone, the abundant pre-ovulatory hormone. Okay, and that is secreted from secondary follicle of the ovary. So what I was saying is that this proliferation depends on the levels of levels of estrogen in the uterus, and the levels of estrogen depends on the secondary follicle maturation. So that's why they go hand in hand at the same time. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Then from on the 14th day is the ovulation, and ovulation is happening in ovaries. So ovulation is the secondary oocytes release. It happens in the ovaries, and exactly on 14th day when it happens, you will see that it happens under the effect of these 2 hormonal surge. LH and FSH reach their peak on day 14, which leads to ovulation. Okay, so FSH and LH leads to ovulation. Once the ovulation happens, at that time, you see that in the uterus, you see a declining trend starting with the estrogen and a increasing trend which starts with the progesterone. So now the hormones are switching function and sites. So what was at the peak a couple of days before is now declining, and what was not present significantly now starts increasing, because after ovulation it shifts. So that's why progesterone, which comes up in the secretory phase, and estrogen then goes down, but still it maintains a level which is higher than what it was in the bleeding phase. In the bleeding phase, there was no hormone, no estrogen, no progesterone. That leads to bleeding. Okay. But even in the secretory phase, there is a very less prominent level of estrogen, but it is there. A low level of estrogen is maintained. Okay. But the major peak reaches of progesterone, which stays stable throughout the secretory phase, because progesterone keeps the endometrium intact. It keeps the endometrium, it prevents the endometrium from falling back or breaking apart. So this is in anticipation of pregnancy. So the system is being ready for pregnancy if there is a pregnancy. Okay, so it has to be ready. So it is like the arrangements that has to be done, and progesterone takes care of that arrangement. And after ovulation, FSH and LH goes back down again in the ovary, like secreted less from the pituitary, and its effect on the ovary goes down again. So its levels in the blood you will see very down, because after ovulation, so what happens to the oocyte? It becomes corpus luteum, and corpus luteum is, again, there is a correlation. The correlation is that secretory phase depends on the secretion of progesterone, and this secretion depends also on corpus luteum. So corpus luteum secretes progesterone till it is there. Okay, just like you were making a correlation between secondary follicle, estrogen and the proliferative phase, secretory phase, progesterone and corpus luteum. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And if pregnancy happens, then this level of progesterone will now be sustained for the next 9 months, because corpus luteum after some time degenerates, but now the embryo which has been formed, that also starts secreting progesterone along with the placenta, that keeps the level of progesterone stable in the blood. Okay, so that's if pregnancy happens. If pregnancy does not happen, this corpus luteum will degenerate into corpus albicans. The level of progesterone will go down, and by the day 28, it will reach again the minimal, and again the bleeding phase will start, and this whole cycle in the ovary and uterus, which are in sync, will start again together. Is that clear, everyone? So progesterone is the most predominant post-ovulatory hormone in the uterus, or which is secreted from ovary. Yeah, that's all. Is it clear, Shaheen?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
in my half yearly school paper, the teacher gave us a case study on this graph,
Okay.
and I got the answers wrong, and I never figured out where I went wrong. Can I send you the question, and can you do
Yes,
it?
we can. Yes, we can do it right now. Tell me the questions.
I'll read the graph given below showing the levels of ovarian hormones during menstrual cycle. Answer the following. I'll send you the picture. Can I?
Yes, you can. Where do you want to? Can you put it in the chat?
Yes, I think. Let me just see.
So you never went back to the teacher and figured out what went wrong?
I did,
was it the same?
She gave me very vague answers, and I couldn't make out what she was trying to explain.
She didn't explain. Okay. It's unfortunate, but I don't know what to say, but yeah, let's do it. I think teachers have just one job to do, right? It's to explain. So was it the same graph or was it some altered graph? Like, did they show you some changed conditions and then ask you what could be the reason or something like that? Yeah, I got
Yeah, I
something in the
sent you
chat.
the
Yes,
picture.
I'm downloading it. Okay, can you see this? No, I think cannot see this. Okay, so let me share this picture with everyone. Maybe let me cut this part and paste it here. Just give me 1 second, okay? This is just question 29, right? That you are worried about?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I got that question. My clipboard. I go to resume share. Let me try to paste it here. I hope it comes up. No, it's not coming up. Okay. Just one moment, people. Yeah, is this the question you're referring to, Rifat? This is the question, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's do it together. This might. Okay, it's so for others, anyone who would like to solve this question first. So the question is, we have a question which came in one of your fellow colleagues' exam. So it can come in your exam or something similar. Read the graph given below showing the levels of ovarian hormones during menstrual cycle and answer the following. First is identify the hormones X and Y. Okay, so these are pituitary hormones, and just to confuse, these lines are just crossing. And so, but one thing is, this is X, I think, and this is Y, and X has a higher peak than Y. So it's very simple. Can anyone tell me what is X and Y? What do you see has a higher peak here? So I have not shown them crossing because we actually are, you're not very sure how much that crossing happens. But again, I told you that this crossing might confuse you because this is going up. So X is reaching the highest because it cannot be this and this, right? Doesn't make any sense. So it's crossing. Okay. So the one reaching the higher, which is X in this case, will be the luteinizing hormone. So X is LH and Y is FSH. Correct? As I showed you, LH and FSH. LH is required in higher amounts than FSH because FSH has one job, that is to stimulate. So you can either stimulate with less quantities of the hormone. So that's how it works. So first is clear, right? I hope you did not do this wrong. Fatima?
No, I got this right.
Right. So next is correlate the events. Let me delete this something again. So correlate the event that takes place in uterus according to the hormone levels on 6 to 15 days. Okay. So now that's interesting. So this is day 6 here, and this is day 15 here. So they're asking this day 15. Correlate the events that take place in uterus according to the hormone levels on 6 to 15. So 6 to 15, what's happening? Mostly events. The estrogen reaches the peak and comes down. So estrogen function is active into the uterus during 6 to 15 majorly. So this is day 5, this is day 6. and this is day 15th, correct? Somewhere, let's say. So what you see prominently in between this is the estrogen's function in the uterus, correct? Fatima, makes sense to you? And
Yes.
between 6 to 15 is the proliferative phase of the uterus. Okay. Though 14 is not included in any phase in the books that you will read. In biology, 14th day we consider as ovulation, and from 14th day onward we say secretory phase starts. But because these are not like exact things, so if they're asking 6 to 15, the only thing which is happening there is proliferative phase and ovulation. So the answer to this is that from 6 to 15 day in the uterus, according to hormone levels, two things are happening. One is the proliferative phase where the endometrium has started to thicken. Estrogen levels will go high, and that will allow the proliferation to happen. And exactly on day 14, you will have ovulation under the effect of LH and FSH surge, which they have also shown. They have shown the LH surge coming a little bit before, which is a little debatable, but it's okay. So do you understand what happens between 6 to 15? Proliferative phase of the uterus under the effect of estrogen peak, and second is ovulation. Okay, and from 16 to 25 is the secretory phase. Actually, it's why we call it till 25, because I have shown you here that from 25th day onwards, if pregnancy does not happen, the levels start going down. Okay, so till 25 it is sustained. So from 6 to 25, majorly only one thing is happening, that is secretory phase, where the endometrium is becoming even more thicker, achieves around 3 times the thickness that it achieved in the proliferative phase that I told you, under the effect of progesterone peak and sustained peak of progesterone in the uterus. Okay, and then they're asking, is that clear to you, Fatima?
Yes, sir. This is, I got the whole B answer wrong.
You got the whole B answer wrong. So,
yes.
So you understand, in fact, that what you got wrong, which was not,
yes,
which your teacher did not understand. But do you understand the logic now? Do you understand that what is the correct answer now? 6 to 15. You just have to keep in mind these two graphs as one. You know, this is what's happening in ovary, and this is what's happening in the uterus. So whatever time point they pick and ask you a question, you don't have to get confused. Just look at the important milestone. Okay.
yes.
This is the most standard graph I have shown you, and which we have drawn here. As I told you, female to female in humans, this graph may vary a little, itsy bitsy here and there, but what is fixed is 14th days is ovulation. Here I have shown that bleeding phase is just 5 days. It can be 7 also, it can be 3. So if it is just for 3 days, from the 4th day onward, you will see estrogen rising. If it is for 7, then from 8th day onward, you will see estrogen rising. Sometimes estrogen starts rising and the bleeding is still ending. So both can overlap. Okay, but you have to understand the broader theme. So A and B is clear. This is about proliferative phase. This is about secretory phase. Estrogen peak, progesterone peak. Yeah. C, 26 to 28 days if the ovum is fertilized. Yes, so they are asking you a trick question here. So you have to talk about this dotted line graph. From 26th day onwards, if you see here, if the pregnancy happens, if ovum is fertilized, means if pregnancy happens, that there is the progesterone level don't go down. Corpus luteum still degenerates in the ovary, but they are not asking about ovary. The question is specifically asking about what happens in the uterus. Yeah, I was finding this. So what happens in uterus? So you just have to talk that in the uterus, the progesterone level persists if fertilization has happened, and it does not go down, and endometrium thickening does not breaks down. It stays thick and waits for the implantation. So that is the answer for the third. Clear everything?
Yes, sir.
Fatima? Yeah, okay, cool. Anyone else has any doubts from this chapter? Can tell me.
Sir, for exams, is it important to draw that cross in the graph?
Okay, you are saying what, this crossing over?
Yes, sir.
No, see, because this is not a very apt, this is not correct representation. Okay, it says that to begin with there was a hormonal level. On day 1 there was some hormonal level of LH and FSH, correct? Can you see
Yes,
this? These are high, these are not zero, LH and FSH. But the point is, and this graph is also wrong on many parameters, because if you let it go, it is almost slightly less of the peak. So to begin with there was a peak, then it went down, then there is a peak, then it went down, and then, so you understand, it should not be the case. The peak is clearly a peak, it is multifold, more than 20-fold higher hormonal level in the blood. So I will say that draw this one. Okay, this shows that the hormone is not functioning here. If LH starts functioning here only, even if the LH level is half of what it is here, sorry, so the level of FSH, so here the level of FSH in the beginning is around 70% of what is the peak, maybe 80%. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so
Yes.
it doesn't make sense, right? When FSH level starts increasing, ovulation starts to happen. Okay, so don't
Yes.
draw this crossing, just draw this one. This is the most standard thing. We can actually not figure out, these levels are so low in the blood. These are all theoretical graphs that exams show to give you some sense of relatedness, but we cannot actually figure out which is crossing when. Hormonal fluctuations even happen on an hourly basis when females are on their menstrual cycle. There is a term called PMS, premenstrual syndrome. Have you heard? You must be knowing about PMS, of course, much better than me, being women. And PMS gives you all sorts of very quicky wacky mood swings, your urges, your hunger urge, your feeding, drinking, your sleep cycle, even hair, the dryness of the skin and the hair follicles texture changes on very hourly basis. So what we need to focus majorly is FSH and LH stays almost very low. We cannot say zero because no hormone is zero in the blood. So very low, as trace amount, and then reaches a peak. So making a cross or not making a cross anyways does not make any sense in the beginning of the cycle. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So it's not important. Yeah. Just stick to this graph. Any other doubts from this chapter, people? Yes, no? Okay, any other chapter where you want me to go through something else? If no, then so what I have decided for this part is that let me do one thing. Let me share. You all have NCERT with you for like to discuss chapter 16. It won't need more
Yes.
than one class. I'm just going to tell you important concepts and what you need to know about it for your entrances. For boards, that chapter is not relevant. So let me do one thing. Let me share the book only. For that, I have to give me one more moment to pull out that chapter. People. It's a very theoretical chapter, but it has some concepts. How to get that book? NCERT. So open chapter 16, everyone, in your books, please. Class 12th, biology. Yeah, I got it. Yes, download, please. Thank you so much. Yes, here it is. Okay. So can you all see the screen, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Let me test the page. Very well. So let's go chapter 16 this way. And in this chapter, basically it talks about environmental issues. And if you see the subdivisions, you have to learn about air pollution and its control, water pollution and its control, solid wastes, agrochemical, and radioactive waste, greenhouse effect, ozone depletion. So it's all just topic, some of which we have already discussed, if not in exact detail, but for example, it's blue here, for example. Okay, sorry, my bad. Yeah. For example, deforestation, we have talked about deforestation, not in the sense of deforestation, but we have talked about loss of forests in ecosystem chapter, right? So you know some parameters of it to begin with. Okay, cool. You also know about air pollution, just the basics of air pollution, right? Water pollution, solid waste. We talked about waste management in biotechnology, right? So keep that thing in mind, that solid wastes are. And about agrochemical wastes, you have some idea. Radioactive waste is new, and radioactive waste is also important from the perspective of boards. Greenhouse effect and ozone depletion layer I will talk about, because these are some topics which, whether they are in your syllabus or not, they are also general science topics, so you should know about it, and it can be asked in any entrance just as an amplitude, what do you say, aptitude question. Yeah. So as we know some basic thing about pollution, you know that pollution is undesirable change in physical, chemical, or biological characteristics of air or land, that you can see here. And this you don't need to worry about which act came in what, because it will not be asked in your boards. I would like you to go and pay some attention to, yes, so this is one thing called electrostatic precipitator, which is used to control air pollution. So just know the concept of it, because it is physics with biology included in this part. So we have dirty air coming in, okay, and this dirty air goes through a channel where there is a so this part is called a spray, or you can say it has a plate where, so something are like particulate matters. Particulate matters are particles. Let's say if there is something like a particle in the air, it will first settle. What does not settle, you then have to spray some on these dust particles. You have to make them negatively charged, okay. And when this, so this is called, so you have certain wires in this electrostatic precipitator. So electrostatic simply means, any one of you have ever felt an electrostatic current? Then you will understand what I'm saying. You know what is electrostatic current? Electricity is, you have studied electricity in physics, right? You must be knowing about electrostatic current. Sometimes we get it from, especially in the cold, in the winters, we get it from our woolen clothes, or when we touch someone who's wearing woolen clothes, or from metal handles of the doors, we get a static current, very minute. That is because electrons sometimes are charged and are there already, and just flow of electrons can lead to current. So when it moves from there to your body, you feel that charge which is depositing over time as a static charge. It is not moving, it is just deposited there. So it's the difference between the potential of your finger and that metal thing or the woolen thing which is charged. You must have done this one cool thing as kids, right? We rub scale on here and then pieces of paper get attracted to that plastic scale. Have done it?
Yes, yes, sir.
Yeah. So what's happening there when we are rubbing that plastic scale? What's happening? And it will not work with a metal scale. You will not be able to charge a metal scale again, because that to reach that level of it's difficult. So with plastic it's easy, and also many factors can not make it not work. If someone has applied lots of oil in the hair, it will not work. If someone hair is wet, it will not work. It has to be dry hair and a dry scale. If the scale is wet, it will not work. The paper also does not have to be oily, or the paper has to be just freshly torn into small pieces. If it's a big chunk of paper, it will not work. If you tear the pieces and keep it for 2-3 days and then use it, it might not work. So the point is, you are charging the scale, the electrons in the scale. When you are rubbing it with hair, some electrons get electrostatically just deposited at the tip, at the tip or the layer, outer layer of the scale. When you bring it near the paper, there is an attraction. Okay, the proton electron, negative and positive charge attraction, and it moves up towards the scale. So it's not magic, it's just simply science. So you use the same concept. So this negatively charged wire, which has this dirty air, so these dust particles through this spray, they are kind of charged. Dust particles are charged, they settle, and when they settle here, they lead to this discharge corona. It's not about the coronavirus here, but corona simply means, what is the meaning of the word corona? What does corona means? It means the outer. Corona basically is the word comes from sun, the outer surface of the sun, which has this spike like appearance that we make. So anything like that is called a corona layer. So the COVID virus is called, these viruses are called coronavirus family, because these viruses look like they have surface which looks like, why can't it, which looks like kind of, I'm fed up with this. So there is this surface which have proteins like this. This is called corona. So here also, when dust particles deposit, they have shown you very small, very smooth thing, but it's like this is the wire, and when things will start depositing on it over time, it will keep on growing, right? Like, can you see what I'm doing here? Dust is depositing. It will keep getting thicker. It is basically trapping all the dust from the dirty air, and the surface will not be very smooth. It will look something like this, like a corona surface. So this is the discharge corona on a negatively charged wire, and what you get out of here is a clean air with very few particles, or you cannot say 100% clean air. And this collection plate is grounded. So this is the electrostatic precipitator. Okay, it goes into the ground so that you don't get the current, but this is electrostatic precipitator. We are using the concept of electricity, okay, to remove the particulate matter present in the exhaust. Mostly they were used for thermal power plants. Nowadays we still rely on a lot of thermal power plants, but now there are nuclear power plants also taking up. Thermal power plant is where you burn coal and you produce heat. You rely on the heat energy to run it by burning coal, and it can produce lots of pollutants. So one way by which particulate matter is depleted is through this electrostatic precipitator method. Okay, so just read this part from your NCERT, and just as a fun thing, you will know that how it works. Okay, that's one thing that you have to know from this chapter. And don't worry much about these levels or things. Another thing is, again, this thing you don't have to worry about, but you have to this thing you can remember quickly. This is also related to remember I told you about sewage treatment, where we talked about BOD and dissolved oxygen, people. So the concepts are connecting. Yes. So what is BOD and what is dissolved oxygen? And can anyone just explain this graph to me? It's the same graph. Effect of sewage discharge on some important characteristics of river. So though this is, you are studying this in this graph in chapter 16, you already know about this concept from chapter 12 or 12, I think, applications of biotechnology. So anyone can explain this graph to me quickly? Fatima, would you like to try? It's simple. The sewage treatment plant we talked about, when the sewage comes into any freshwater source, it should be treated before we throw it in. Now in this chapter, it is showing the effect of sewage discharge. If you don't treat it, then what will happen? Anyone? Shaheen, would you like to try? It's simple, people. Just give it a try. Don't worry. You got it.
Lesser the BOD, more oxygen is dissolved.
Perfect. So what is BOD?
Is oxygen demand, and I don't remember B.
Biological or biochemical. Biochemical is the good word. So it's the biochemical or biological oxygen demand, which means how much oxygen is required by the organisms which are present in that water body to survive. If a lake is very flourishing, has fish and a lot of other living organisms, the more will be the BOD of that lake. Sorry, the less will be the BOD of that lake, because if it is flourishing, so this is talking about concentration. So again, just like we did in case of menstruation, just compare it here. So the moment you put sewage in the river, this black thing is showing that, you see that fish gets killed and organisms start disappearing. So those organisms which can only live in clean water will start dying, because the moment you put in a lot of sewage, suddenly the dissolved oxygen which was high now drops to low, almost nil. Okay, so if there is no oxygen, because all of a sudden we put in a lot of waste, and you know from chapter 12 what does this waste contains? Lot of anaerobic bacteria, right? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and it contains toxic substances, human fecal waste, etc., etc. So the moment we put it, we expulge it, oxygen, dissolved oxygen goes very low, and hence the demand goes very high. So something, when it is not present, its demand will be the highest. Okay, so when oxygen will not be there, the demand for oxygen will be high. So when, that's what BOD is. After, over the time, what happens is, I told you, even in the natural, what we were doing in that using biotechnology, nature also does that. Over time, aerobic bacteria will start coming in and will start producing oxygen, right? And sorry, will start degrading the matter, the fecal matter, and due to which this gradation which you are seeing is decreasing, right? From black to less darker to less darker to white. So this is the cutoff where, as the waste in that water will keep on degrading due to bacterial action, which we were doing in very big bioreactors, nature is doing on its own over time, but it first had to suffer the consequence of loss of life. Correct? That's the consequence it has to suffer. And after some time it will increase, and hence the BOD will decrease. Okay? Make sense, everyone?
Yes.
When the dissolved level will come up again to a very, very good level, you will see that clean water organisms are again coming back. Either they are, being born from their eggs, or they are reproducing more, or they are coming from somewhere else and they start living. If it is a river, it is connected, they will start occupying the place, and BOD will go down. So high BOD, which means high pollution and less oxygen, that's why that's why its demand is more. So this graph you need to keep in mind. Can still be questions on this, can still be asked, because you have already done this in chapter 12. Make sense to everyone?
Yes.
Yeah. Any doubt? No, right? This is the effect of sewage discharge and some characteristics. So about this, the explanation is given here. So this is the explanation. So what happens in nature? You can just read this part. Biochemical oxygen demand or biological oxygen demand. It's biochemical is more because even the living organisms do chemistry inside their body with this oxygen. And yeah, then no need to worry about this. Yes, this is one concept which is called biomagnification. It's a simple concept. I have seen questions in NEET on this, so that's why we should not leave this part. Biomagnification has two words, bio and magnification. What does bio means? Life. Magnification means? What does magnification means? Increase. So something is increasing, and it is related to food chain, which is in your syllabus. So that's actually kind of funny that the parts which are omitted, they are not exclusive parts, that if you don't read, you will never get to know about it. So you know about food chain, right? From the last chapters in ecosystem only, food web and food chain, trophic levels. So this is connected to trophic level only, but it has just one more aspect of a chemical toxicity added to it. So as I told you, as we go up high in the food chain, so this is exactly in the water live some zooplanktons. Okay, these zooplanktons are eaten by small fish. The small fish is eaten by big fish, and these fish can again sometimes be eaten by the apex predator, which is your birds like raptors, falcons, these, so which can hunt these bigger fish. So we are talking about a trophic level here, a food chain here, correct? Make sense, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Now what they are saying is that toxic substances gets magnified as we go up in the food chain. And what is the reason for it? The reason is that in the water, the DDT, ppb is parts per billion. Okay, ppb, parts per billion. DDT is, what is DDT?
No, sir.
Have you seen people spraying something in water bodies to get rid of mosquitoes? So places where mosquito is a big problem and it causes malaria, dengue, chikungunya, the water is sprayed by a chemical called DDT. Okay, DDT does not allow mosquito growth, so it protects you from mosquitoes, and also it is it's not very what do you say, metabolically, you cannot break down DDT metabolically. It's not used in our body, so we don't break it down. So things which cannot be broken down through metabolism can get accumulated over time, like not just DDT. It can be the same question can come about lead. Lead is a very heavy metal in water. Okay, lead can also get biomagnified in the trophic level. Okay, so they have taken the example of DDT. It is 0.003 parts per billion in water to begin with. Okay, when zooplanktons take that water in, that DDT gets deposited in their cells, and because they cannot metabolically break it down, the concentration will increase from 0.003, it is 0.04. So can you see that it is one decimal? So almost 10 times it got magnified. Yes or no? Here only. The level was very low to begin with, I understand, but from, can you see the 10-fold change here? right? Around 10-fold change, yes or no?
Yes.
3 decimal point to 2 decimal point parts per million. Oh, sorry, it's parts per million. So it's, oh, I'm so sorry. It's not even 10. It's multi-million. It's multi-fold. So it's not 10. It's more than 100,000 folds. I don't know how to delete in this thing. Okay, but you understood, right? Many-fold it got amplified. Then from zooplanktons, it come to parts per million. From million to billion only it is 10 raised to power 3. So 1,000, 10,000 fold is the change. Please make it clear. From water to zooplankton, 10,000 fold. Then you get from zooplankton to small fish, 2 decimal point to 1 decimal point, which is like 10-fold because both are parts per million. Then another 10-fold and another 10. So by the time it starts with 0.003 parts per billion in water, by the time it reaches the bird, so one small fish will eat more than 1 zooplankton, and 1 zooplankton had more than 1 particle. Then one big fish will eat more than 1 small fish. One fish eating bird in its lifetime will eat more than 1 large fish. And overall, you will see that in the tissues of a large predatory bird which feeds on fish, the DDT levels will reach 25 parts per million, which might not be very, very high in terms of numbers or chemistry, but in terms of its effect in biology, it is very high. Okay, it can have toxic effects. Do you understand what does biomagnification means?
Yes.
So if these toxic substances, if they're present in the wastewaters coming out of industries or from other chemically rich sources, if it stays in the aquatic food chain, it keeps on getting magnified. Okay, that's called biomagnification. This is just one example. It can also happen with plants. So lead, for that matter, heavy metals like lead and other kind of toxic substances which are used in pesticides and insecticides, they stay inside plant and they also get magnified when herbivorous eats that and carnivorous eats that and some maybe apex predator eats that. Okay, same is with some substances like so for poultry, you know, all our poultry, most of the poultry farms, chickens, they are raised under very high antibiotic doses, because the poultry owners do not want, they just want like it's a business. So non-vegetarian food market is a business, whether it's fish culturing or poultry, they give these chickens and fish antibiotics so that they don't get infection, they don't die, and the amount is surplus, the yield is surplus. But when we are eating, it gets into our body as well, and it gets biomagnified. Many of the things in our body also gets biomagnified. Okay, is that clear, everyone? Yeah. So these are some concepts, and solid waste you don't have to worry about much. And what's in one more thing is, yeah, radioactive waste. So for this, just remember that radioactivity can lead to mutations. That's why it's a very, very harmful thing. And all these nuclear power plants where nuclear energy is harvested, they have these big containers where they keep this radioactive waste, which is basically water, which is radioactive. They keep this solution for long time, like for years, because radioactivity or radioactive wastes are very unstable also. Okay, they are extremely damaging, but they are extremely unstable. So if you keep it for 1 year, 2 years, the radioactivity itself will go down, because all the radioactive element will just break and just go away. After that, you can bury it within the rocks, or you can just discard it within the earth very deep, where it is not affecting the water that you are drinking, the groundwater, or the any kind of life. Okay, so that's how it's managed. But sometimes a leakage in these radioactive radioactivity or this holding chambers can lead to problems. Okay, one such accident happened in Chernobyl. Okay, it also happened in 3 Mile Island, about which very few people know. It's not studied that much in history, but you must be knowing about Chernobyl from your history classes. You know about Chernobyl, the class 10th? Chernobyl has a disaster where this radioactive leakage happened and many people died due to radiation and its effect. So it causes mutation in the DNA, and which is very lethal. So your crucial genes might get broken and the person dies of many disorders. Okay, that's it. So you just have to know this thing. So it is what is recommended to store the nuclear waste. After sufficient pre-treatment, it should be done suitably shielded and the containers buried within the rocks more than 500-meter deep, which is like half a kilometer, okay, below the earth's surface. So this is, all our groundwater levels are very up. You start getting water the moment you hit 200 feet. Okay, so this is meters. Okay, so that's how we keep all the life safe from radioactive waste. So that's how it should be dealt with. Okay, just this part was important for some questions. And yes, greenhouse effect and global warming is a very hot topic which you should never leave. So you should just know what is greenhouse effect and what is global warming. Global warming, as you all know, the earth is warming up slowly. The earth has to warm up. It is a cycle of earth to cool down and warm up. But that's not the problem. The problem is that we humans, by our activities, are leading this process to happen very fast. Okay, that's the problem. So it's happening at a very rapid pace, at a pace at which I already told you, right? Remember, we discussed that any change in the climate must happen at a pace where organisms get the time to adapt, correct? Otherwise, you will see loss of life and extinction of species. So that is what currently we are seeing. We are seeing global warming, a rapid pace due to which areas are very suddenly. Have you seen these seasonal fluctuations? Some areas do not get rain some year, and next year they will get so much of rain that there will be drought one year and there can be floods the other year. Correct? There will be very hot summers one year and there will be very cold winters the next year. So that's what people are dealing with, extremities in seasons and temperatures and these fluctuations. That's happening because the whole ecosystem is not able to adapt to these slow changes because they are ramping up. But what is greenhouse effect is, just like in a greenhouse in very cold countries like the northern European countries, where they need to grow things like tomato. So tomato needs some temperature. Tomato needs high temperature to grow. So in tropical countries, it grows very good, like in India. But in Europe, so they need to what they do is they in the farm only. So there will be land on which you will have these tomato plants. Okay. And if you leave it, the land open, if you're growing it in open land, it will not grow because of the cold. During the night, it will be very cold. So what they do, they make a glass house around it. Sorry. Oh, what's this new feature in this thing? So they make a glass house. You're understanding what I'm drawing here?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So what will happen due to this glass house is that sunlight will enter. Okay. And this glass house is made in a way where sunlight can enter, but after hitting the ground or the plant, when it will try to go out, it won't be. So you know about these dichroic glasses. Sunlight, you can see from one side, you cannot see from the other side. So light cannot go out like that. So for sunlight, they trap it. So these glass houses are called greenhouses because the temperature inside it can be up to 10 to 15 degrees higher than what it is outside. Okay, and you grow these crops in these things. So this shielding of heat is called greenhouse effect, And this greenhouse effect can also be seen in our atmosphere, where certain gases, which are CO2, and your methane, which is CH4, and ammonia, some sulfuric gases. So these two are major: methane, hydrogen disulfide, ammonia, carbon dioxide. They act as a greenhouse gas. So they have a layer which traps. So the light that falls on Earth's surface is also reflected back. Okay, and it's very important because we have to only take the amount of heat which is important for life to survive. Okay, if we trap more than that, the glaciers will melt. But if we trap less than that, the tropics will have lower temperature and it will become more like temperate, and a lot of freezing. The glacier will expand. So there's a very delicate balance between melting of glaciers and forming of glaciers that has to be maintained. If glaciers melt then more than one level, then the overall sea level will rise, and the cities which are at the edges, which are at the sea coast, will get submerged. And also when glaciers melt, they get detached from each other, and this whole ecosystem for polar bears, walrus, Arctic fox, their habitat gets fragmented. And in the last chapter I told you that habitat loss or habitat fragmentation is one of the reasons for biodiversity loss. So the tundra biodiversity is lost. All these things make sense to you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this greenhouse effect is happening more because of increased level of CO2, because of man-made human activities of burning fossil fuels and etc., because of which the mean temperature is rising. So the average temperature is 15 degrees Celsius of the Earth, which is rising. And as you can see, these are the greenhouse gases: CO2, methane, the most, 60 plus 20, they make the 80% of the greenhouse gas. Methane is CH4, as I was telling you. This is very bad. I don't like it at all. Yeah, CH4 and CO2. Then CFCs are called chlorofluorocarbons. This is important from entrance point of view because CFCs are present in our air conditioners and in our refrigerators. Okay, in many household apparatus, this is, just write down, air conditioners, and many household apparatus. This is called chlorofluorocarbons. So this is also rising up, the extent of chlorofluorocarbons. So now many governments, many countries have banned the use of CFCs, and they are saying that use alternatives of it. Do not use CFCs, because CFCs goes up in the atmosphere and they affect one very important thing in our upper atmosphere, which is called ozone. Okay, now ozone is present in the upper part of the atmosphere called stratosphere. So this question, remember that ozone is in stratosphere. Lower is called troposphere, stratosphere, then thermosphere, ionosphere, and then space, right? As you go up in the atmosphere, the density of the gases decreases and it's less dense and it's more cold. So there's no heat preservation. This is over Antarctica. So this continent which you are seeing here, this big continent, is Antarctica, which is mostly lifeless. We don't have higher life forms there, any kind of mammals, reptiles, amphibians there. This is your South America coming to touch from one point. On the other side, you will also have Australia and Africa on one side. So this is the South Pole. Okay. South Pole. So over Antarctica, it's also over the Arctic Ocean. So both on North and South Pole, you will see that these ozone holes are present in the stratosphere. Okay. And this thickness of ozone is measured in Dobson unit, du. This was asked once in the entrance. And chlorofluorocarbons is important. That's all you need to. And this ozone hole is formed when these CFCs, now greenhouse gases will trap the heat, that's understood, but why there is a hole in the ozone? To understand that, you have to understand the chemistry, how chlorofluorocarbons react with ozone. By the way, ozone is O3. It is just when O3 breaks down, it breaks down into O2 plus nascent oxygen. So we write it as O, like this. Okay, so this is the reaction, and this breaking down happens due to CFCs. CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons, break down the ozone into oxygen and nascent oxygen. Okay, cool. Anything? Yeah, rest is okay. And this ozone is very important to protect the earth from UV radiation. Yes, the most important thing is ozone protects our life from UV radiation, and UV radiation we know is very, very harmful for living systems. When exposed to UV for longer times, or when exposed to high intensity of UV for even shorter times, we get mutations, we get cancers. It can cause our eyes to go blind. Over time, the cornea gets inflamed, cataract happens, something, all these things which are shown here. So that's why ozone is very important. Ozone is only present in a stratosphere. CFC is depleting ozone, and CFC is also a greenhouse gas. Okay. Yeah, so there was a Montreal Protocol which many countries signed in 1987, but it was effective in 1989, which says that from now onwards, together, all these countries will work to protect the ozone layer and to protect life on Earth. Okay, these deforestation and all is not important, because you already know about deforestation, loss of forest cover area from ecosystems chapter. Yeah, that's all. Don't worry about these movements and all, because they will not be asked in boards, but I will still say that you can just read this part for your entrance. Entrance sometimes asks very factual questions in the name of aptitude. Okay, so some aptitude based learning. Okay. Yeah. So that's all about this chapter. Some important things which I told you. Yeah. Okay. So anyone has any doubts? People? Doubts, questions?
No, sir, no.
No doubts? Okay, so very well. Please revise all of this. And similarly, I want to have one more class for chapter 9, which is enhancement strategies to enhance the food crop production, right? I think someone was asking about Shine. You were asking about this in the last class, I think.
No, sir. Yes,
No?
someone else was.
Rifat, was it Rifat or Shaheen? I don't remember. On Monday, someone asked me to, or was it Fatima? It was some girl, I remember. It was a feminine voice, so, but yes, we will do it. We'll do one more such class where I'll be talking about important stuffs. And then after that, you people have to take a call. I have planned some entrance questions which are important, preparing some entrance questions in the class if you are up for it. Those classes will of course be optional to join, but you should join those. like some important questions from genetics and from these concepts which require some problem solving, or which require some formula based solution. What requires just to know, like if someone asks you what is the name of this in the entrance, then you just need to know it. If you know it, you know it. If you don't know, you don't know. But some questions are more conceptual, so for that we will have some classes. Okay, so in the next class I'll be talking about the important portions of chapter 9 which we left because it's omitted from boards. Okay, everyone, sounds good?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And also please bring your doubts like you did today. Any doubt from anywhere from the syllabus, any question you encountered anywhere in the mock or in your school exams or while solving some